This is ContraZoom,
where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
And I'm Rachel Ho.
Just 2 short weeks ago, the British Film Institute released its once-a-decade Sight and Sound poll of the greatest films of all time. If you follow film discourse at all, since then you would have been consumed by it all. The surprise new number 1 film, too many new movies added, too many classics that fell off the list, the fact that movies now are too woke, the release of ballots, and the criticism of some lists being too obscure and others being too mainstream. It literally seemed like everyone had something to say, and odds were that it was negative. In anticipation of this list, though, we decided to conduct our own poll. Sure, over 1,600 critics and almost 500 directors were polled for the 2 lists, but a lot of podcasters and bloggers who make up a large portion of the film criticism community these days were left out. So we're going to talk about the official list, reveal our own list, and talk about what movies we voted for on our own list since, we're not actually official voters. And who we would have voted for if we sent in an official ballot. But before we get into all this, we do have some exciting news and some housekeeping to announce. But before that, first of all, Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited for this. I think both of us have been looking forward to this episode for I don't know, quite a while now, actually. I think for a few months now. So I'm excited that we actually get to do it. Looking forward to it. How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, this has sort of been consuming my life.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm thinking about the podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, the Science Sound poll. How am I going to do this? Yeah. And the amount of times we pushed this episode back because I wasn't sure when the official list was coming out.
It was, I think, in the summertime we talked about. You brought this up, but I just want to say you did a hell of a lot of work on this episode in terms of getting this list together for other the ContraZoom list and contacting so many people. And I was completely useless in this endeavor. So well done to you. And thank you for doing all of that. And I'm sorry I was such a dead weight on that.
That's okay.
I did nothing on it. Don't even try. I did nothing on it. This was all you. And I think it turned out really well. I think that, yeah, sure. I was providing moral support, but I think it's cool. You did put in a lot of work, and I think that it should be recognized because I think that the list that it's a cool idea to come up with a separate list. I know that there's lists all over the place, but the idea of talking to, like you said, podcasters, vloggers, bloggers, people who will most likely never get a chance to put their 2 cents in on a poll like Sight and Sound. I think you provided a really great opportunity for people.
Well, thank you very much. I hope these people do check it out and they enjoy it as well. And, we maybe get some new fans and subscribers that way. That would be the ultimate end goal.
But also to encourage film discourse, of course.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now the big announcement, I teased it at the end of the last episode, and I know I've had a few people reach out and be like, oh, I'm very curious to hear what this is all about. And I know Matthew, who was on the last episode with me, was also very curious. I guess before I get into the announcement, have you seen The Captive yet?
No, and I just recorded an episode with Matthew for Awesome Friday, and I told him, I'm like, I haven't listened to your guys' episode either. I haven't seen The Captive, but I don't know. Ryan Reynolds, what version of Deadpool was he in this movie?
He was not Deadpool, which was great.
Oh,
yes.
Fancy.
Yes.
See, this is the thing, and I'm sure you guys talked about this, but when Ryan Reynolds actually just does things that are not Deadpool and Deadpool-like, he's very good. He's good. Yeah. And he does cool stuff and interesting things. But what was that movie that we saw with Jeff and Pierre?
Oh, The Voices.
Yeah, something like that. And then the Buried is another good example of that. He does cool stuff, but I guess Deadpool pays the big bills. That's what's important.
Deadpool doesn't pay the bills. Deadpool buys the houses.
It's not houses, they're estates. They're estates that they buy. Yeah.
Deadpool buys the football teams.
Yeah, and potentially a hockey team. Potentially the Senators as well. So who knows? Yes. But yeah, I will one day I will get to it and I will watch The Captive and I will listen to the episode.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, well, half the episode is us complaining about plot holes, and the other half is us complaining about Ryan Reynolds not being in good movies anymore.
So, but were you guys relatively positive on him on this one being a decent movie, at least decent? I know you said plot.
We were It's funny. We both were saying the same things about our issues with the movie, but I was a bit more positive on it. We don't really give out number grades on this movie like you do on Awesome Friday when you're over there. If I were to imagine out of 5, I imagine Matthew probably would have given it a 2, and I probably would have given it like a 3.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's fair. I will. One day. It'll happen one day. I'm not going to commit to saying that I will definitely do it, but it will one day happen.
Okay. But I've postured long enough and got some news to announce. This has kind of been going on a little bit behind the scenes for a little bit now. But Rachel, you've been writing for That Shelf for a while. But today I want to announce that contrazoompod will be joining the That Shelf family of podcasts. You will still be able to find the show wherever you normally listen to podcasts. That's Spotify, that's Apple, iTunes, whatever it's called these days, Google Podcasts. I'll still post the show up on YouTube. Every podcatcher that I find, I submit it there. You can find it everywhere. But you'll also be able to find it over on thatshelf.com as well. It means we're going to get exposed to a larger audience that they already have. And what I hope is, another great film podcast added to their roster. On their network, they already have many shows there over the years, but some of the current active shows include Bad Gay Movies, hosted by the excellent Bill Antoniou, who's been a guest on this show numerous times, and someone who, when you and I were first talking about this idea, I reached out to him and kind of had a bit of a discussion about what it was like joining That Shelf family for him and how it was working for him, and he only had positive things to say. So I think that was, between the two of you, was really a good convincing factor that this was the right move to make. But there's also Spoiled Rotten, where they look at comic book adaptations, and Black Hole Films, which is hosted by Jeremy Lalonde, the great director, who his name is actually going to come up later in this show as well. But I want to thank Will Perkins, the founder and publisher of That Shelf, for bringing us on, and the rest of the That Shelf team who have been so welcoming so far. So this is a huge move in our evolution, and thank you to you, Rachel, for helping to put this in motion.
No problem. I think again, similar with the science of this list, I didn't really do very much other than connect you guys. But That Shelf's been a great house to kind of put your writing in, and it's a nice team. They're all quite supportive. So Bill, I think, was probably the one that he has the most insight, since he's been doing... How long has he been doing his podcast with That Shelf? Quite a while, I would assume.
I don't know if he's been with them the whole time or not, but he's been doing the Bad Gay Movies, I believe, since 2013. So he's been doing it for a while.
Oh, wow. Okay. But Bill's very involved with That Shelf as well, like with his Criterion lists and things like that. So, I think it's a nice fit, and kind of nice to be a part of like a little family. This is the first one that, since I've come on, where we've kind of joined with a larger network. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah. And I annoyed Bill right away by signing up for one of his That Criterion Shelf articles. And he gave me a nice welcome message on the Slack channels of teasing me right away, which it wouldn't be Bill if you wouldn't be teasing.
You did call him would you call him excellent or amazing?
Yeah. What did I say?
Give him a very
hosted by the excellent Bill Antoniou.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, that's your one compliment, Bill.
There you go. Yeah.
Because I know you're listening to this, because he still sends me corrections every episode.
As he should. Yeah. You gotta keep it honest. Keep it honest.
It just means he's listening, so
yeah, exactly.
And one last thing before we get into all this, I always mention at the end of the show, but if you are a new listener to us and you're liking what you're hearing, end up checking other episodes out, you can also support us on Ko-fi. You can find a link in the show notes or on our website, contrazoompod.com, and any little bit kind of helps help pay for server costs, back-end costs, editing, post-production stuff that all goes on this end, and it's just really means a lot to both of us when you kind of help out with independent people like ourselves who are just trying to have a little bit of fun and talk about movies and share our love with everyone. All right, so as I said earlier, 2 weeks ago, the official Sight and Sound poll did come out, and oh boy, was there discourse about this.
Continues to be. It hasn't ended yet. It hasn't ended.
it's shocking. It's one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, it'll be a couple days and then the news cycle will move on. And it sort of did. And they'd be like, oh yeah, but did you hear about Ty West's ballot? It's like, oh my God, people, why is everyone so goddamn negative? This is a celebration about movies and film and our passion for it. And the response is, how can I shit on this?
I think it didn't, not that it didn't help, but like, cause that shouldn't be a thing, but like, I think the fact that it is December, so a lot of publications are coming out with their end of year lists. That has definitely, I think, exasperated the whole idea of like critics lists, and Sight and Sound being the biggest one, and also like the most comprehensive one. Well, arguably, depending on who you talk to, but like it's not this year, is what I mean. Like it's not just talking about 2022, and I think that that's definitely kind of magnified what people's feelings on lists. And the thing that I will say, that I've seen other people kind of mention, it's just like, you're welcome to make your own list. Like you're very welcome to like put your own list out there and put it, because like art is subjective at the end of the day. And so, you know, for all those people out there who are criticizing these lists, just make your own list and like, yeah, enjoy it. Like that's kind of part of the fun, is coming up with these things.
Yeah. It's annoying, the discourse for me, where, you know, what is it? I think it's 3 new movies were added from this decade. And the reaction has been like, oh, you mean to say this is better than The Godfather 2? It's like, no, that's not what it's saying. It just means that like it appeared on more people's lists. The Godfather 2 was on plenty of people's lists, but like that seemed to be the reaction, is like, this is better than this movie? How is that possible? How's Get Out better than this movie? And it's like, that's not what they're saying. This is like, it's almost like people forget what the concept of a list like this is, of a poll is. It's not saying this is right and everything else is wrong. It's saying, hey, this is what 1,600 people more or less sort of think.
I think that's like the issue with just Twitter in general, or social media. I shouldn't just say Twitter. I think it's just social media in general. Is like, I actually just saw someone where something on Twitter where they were saying like, you put out a statement about anything and everybody will make it about themselves. Like, how does this affect me individually? Because I think the way that they worded it was, I am the protagonist of this reality, so it must affect me and I need to share what that means. But like you said, like these lists, the top 10, we didn't record this bit, but Matthew and I were talking before we were recording about like, we were talking about these lists actually. And I was just saying like, there's no such, in my opinion, there's no such thing as the greatest movie of all time. Like you can't really say that. And such, like, it's just people's opinions of it. And so what Sight and Sound does is they just, like you said, they poll 1,600 plus people, from varying walks of life and different, you know, careers and things like that, and ages and all that kind of thing. And this is just the amalgamation of what everybody's personal, what they believe to be the top 10 or whatever. Doesn't necessarily mean, though, that there is a greatest movie of all time. And I will stand by, I don't think that there is a greatest movie of all time, because it depends on what your definition of great, and like, how are you defining what is best? Like it's very, very subjective, this exercise. Yeah,
absolutely. Because then you're considering factors like originality, replayability,
impact, like on social,
yeah, all these different criteria where you're going to individually weigh it differently compared to someone else. Like you and I, we're 2 people, in our list of like what would constitute a greatest movie would be very different, even though if we can probably come to the conclusion of, you know, the same handful of movies should be in that conversation.
And it might even be, even if we can agree on, say, like, here are the 3 that we both can say these are the 3 greatest of all time. To us, the reason they're the greatest could be very different. Like we could be seeing them in a very different way. So yeah, people, stop arguing about these things. It is fruitless. And these lists are just kind of, I would say, like, take it, use it as an opportunity to say like, okay, I don't know a ton of these movies. Go out and get them. Never before has it been easier to like access films, whether legitimately or illegitimately. Like it's not tough anymore to find movies. So if you've never heard of this random Italian movie, go find it. Like, and you might enjoy it. Who knows?
Yeah. And I think that was like the big. I saw a great reply to the Ty West ballot, and people were mocking it because it was basically, if you haven't seen Ty West ballot, if you were to say, okay, Rachel, close your eyes and pick what you think are probably going to be the 10 movies that are going to show up, that's what Ty West ballot is. Like, it doesn't have like any left field picks. It doesn't have any, you would expect him as a horror director to have like some deep horror cuts or things like that. It's not. It's like what you would expect it to be. And so I saw a great reply to his list, basically being like, when Ty West was growing up, there wasn't the internet. If you grew up in a small town, you had very limited options of hoping that your local video store would have something or your library would have it as well. And so the types of movies you were exposed to was very limited. So you were told, hey, Citizen Kane, that's the pinnacle for movies. And you go, great. Yes, I watch it. It's great. This is the pinnacle of movies. And you don't have the ability to really find the hidden niche stuff. And so I read that and I was like, man, that's a great reply of like, hey guys, like, get off his ass. Like, this list is still good. Like, it doesn't have like what you would probably want Ty West's list to look like. But at the same time, he grew up being told these are the greatest films of all times. Yeah, I kind of agree. These are the greatest movies.
I just looked up how old he is, and he's like born in 1980. So like, yeah, those are like, I kind of expect that from somebody who grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Like, those are the movies that you would think are the best ones.
Yeah.
But the funny thing to me is, like, as much as people were shitting on Ty West for being too populist, there were a ton of people who were also saying this list is too vague. I don't know any of these movies. So it's like, what do you guys want? Like, you can't please everybody. And like, again, like that's the whole point of these movies, like these lists, is there is no right answer. Even though there is a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, there genuinely is no correct answer of what constitutes the best film of all time, the greatest film of all time. I think that's what they label the list as, right? It's like the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time. Is that what they call it? Yes. That's a nice little pitchy headline, but it's just not true. Like, it's not. It's the greatest films aggregated according to 1,600 plus critics.
Yeah, absolutely.
From around the world,
so
which is correct.
Let's sort of reveal what the top 10 is. Do you want to say the name of the first?
No. I want someone. Your last name is Arsenault, and so I feel like this should be you.
I'm just gonna say the short form. Jean Dielman, 23 Croix du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So, Bill, here's your chance to send in your correction now.
I believe 1080. It would be what? 1080. I think that's it.
Hey, your French is better than mine.
I also believe it's Jean Dielman.
Jean Dielman. I don't know. Every time I hear it mentioned by English critics, it's always Jean Dielman. So that's what I'm going for. Sorry, Bill. That was the number 1. It was the big news because I think previously in 2012, its highest that it was ever been was number 36. And so it jumped all the way up. Number 2, we have Vertigo. Number 3, we have Citizen Kane. Number 4 is Tokyo Story. Number 5 is In the Mood for Love. Number 6 is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Number 7 is Beau Travail. Number 8 is Mulholland Drive. Number 8 is Man with a Movie Camera. And number 10 is Singing in the Rain. So there you have it. That is the top 10. You can find it anywhere else. The whole list of 100. They are going to list the expanded list of, I believe, 250 later on.
Oh,
wow. Of what the rest of the votes were. But that's the top 10. And honestly, I look at that, I'm like, that's a really solid film. For the first time ever, the number 1 film is a movie directed by a woman. We've got movies in different languages and one documentary. We've got different kinds of styles and genres going on. I look at this list, I'm like, you know what? If you're new to film and wanting to really do a deep dive, you can't really go wrong with this list. This is a pretty solid top 10.
I'd agree. I mean, like, there's a few in there I haven't seen specifically towards the end, but I think it's a pretty good mix. And I think that, I know 2000 and or In the Mood for Love is from 2000, Mulholland Drive 2001, but I would say, considering film history, that's relatively recent. That's a pretty modern time.
Absolutely.
So I think it's cool that there's some from 1929 and then you have something from 2001. I think it's really cool. And important. Like I know that there's a whole thing about should new movies, again, those aren't really new, especially in comparison to like something like Get Out or Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Is that the Portrait of a Lady on Fire? Yeah. You know, those are, I understand the argument that maybe newer films shouldn't be included, but I do like that the top 10 has some modern options on there. Because I agree with you. I think it's a really good list.
Yeah, I haven't seen 3 of the top 10. I haven't seen Jeanne Dielman, Beau Travail, or Man with a Movie Camera, so I can't really comment on those 3 in particular. But the other 7, I'm a big fan of all of them.
I just realized I haven't seen 7 through 10. Beau Travail, Mulholland Drive, Man with a Movie Camera. I haven't seen Singing in the Rain.
Whoa.
I know. It's kind of weird. I've just never seen it. I get the gist of it, but like, yeah, I've just never seen it. Jean Dolman, though, I'll say we've mentioned Bill a few times in this podcast, oddly, but he did one of the Criterion shelves that he put together, and we can get the date on this. This was on May 1st, so I guess it would have been the April list, but it was about Delphine Seyrig. That's the extent of my French. But who is the star? She is Jeanne Dielman, and so I watched it earlier this year for the Criterion list, and I loved it. Like, it's genuinely a really great movie. So when I saw it on coming up as number 1, like I thought it was. I didn't realize it had never appeared on the list, which actually to me seems like a very big. That's a blind spot of the list. The fact that this is the first time it's shown. To the movies from 1975.
It's never appeared in the top 10.
Oh,
it's been on the list before. It was number 36 in 2012.
Okay, I thought people were being like, it's just never appeared, and I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Okay, well, if that's the case, then yeah, but I think it's a tremendous movie, and there's a lot to be said about it. It's a very unique film in the way that it was made, and it's an incredible story. And I know a lot of people are pointing at being like, oh, it's like a feminist movie, and yes, it is. Like, it is about a woman, and it is about a woman's life and a woman's journey and what she has to go through on a day-to-day, albeit in a bit of extreme situations. But it's a great movie. So for anybody out there who hasn't seen it, definitely find a way to watch it, because it's excellent. It's a very, very good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited, and this is one of those things where like I've always wanted to watch it, but it's a very long movie. I think it's 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
and so that's sort of been like a bit of a hindrance for me. I'm like, that's a long movie. But I think this is sort of like giving me the kick in the butt, being like, no, you really got to watch this movie. So I'm gonna try. Hopefully this year, if not in the very near future. And Beau Travail is another. We got 2 movies on here directed by women, which is awesome. A Claire Denis movie. Her masterpiece as far as most people are concerned, and one that I've also always wanted to see. You're talking about modern movies. Beau Travail only came out in 1999, so 1 year before In the Mood for Love. So yeah, it's also a very recent movie in terms of movie standards go.
Yeah, and I think, like, again, it's important that we as a film community, like when you're going to have a list like this, that you do cover the different eras of film, because each era of film has contributed something different to film history and to the film tapestry, as it were. But yeah, like I think having movies like that, like Tokyo Story being in there, to me is
so great.
It's so great, and it's also one of those, like, of course it should be in there, like it's a no-brainer. And obviously I was very happy that In the Mood for Love was in there, but again, not a surprise to me, because I know that it is very, very well loved, rightly so. And yeah, I Vertigo, I think it's always, we talk about Hitchcock a little bit, and like which is the best Hitchcock is kind of difficult to say, but these guys say it's Vertigo, and it's my personal favorite of Hitchcock's. But and a filmmaker who has influenced a lot of what has come after him. So like, I think all of this is great. And also there's like Singing in the Rain, even though I haven't seen it, it's a musical, and that's pretty cool that there's a musical in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Overall, I'm very happy with all this. And it's interesting. People were sort of predicting what would be coming out on top. And the voting pool was expanded for this poll in a way that they have never expanded as aggressively, intentionally getting more people from around the world, younger people, more women, more people of color. And so that was a big focus. And that's sort of been, a big thing that a lot of film organizations have been trying to do. The Oscars and the Golden Globes specifically have very publicly been trying to change their membership look and hoping that sort of makes film more inclusive, because, you look through the history of film, it's very dominated by white men, and you look at past lists and that's sort of where the lists go. And so, we got people like Paul Schrader, who very unfortunately looks at Gene Dealman being the number one movie and crying wokeism is ruling it. And it's like, well, maybe if you had included women and people of color and people not from America from the start, it wouldn't be such a shock that movies not made in America and not made by men are very well received.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the place to get into all that, but it's just like, it's just frustrating, because like when people say that, they're just basically, they just want things to be as they were, as they have been for decades upon centuries, specifically in America, right? Like that's what people are looking for, or I shouldn't say America, I should say the West, generally speaking. And they're not really ready to let go of that status quo, because quite frankly, like unless you're saying everybody purposely picked Jean Dumont because it's about it is a feminist movie, like if that's why you think that's why they chose it, one, you probably haven't seen the movie, but two, like, tough shit as far as I'm concerned, because it's just like, look, there's more people who watch movies and have educated opinions on them than white dudes. So, or older white dudes, actually, like middle-aged to older white dudes. And I think the age thing, like we talk about the entrance of some very new movies, like, Get Out, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Parasite being the other one, I think was those were the three most recent, right? We talk about that, and that has something to do with the fact that you're reaching out to younger people, and again, that's a good thing. Like, you should be getting younger people involved, because at a much younger age now, I think people are starting to get into cinema, whereas maybe before it was more of a thing from post-secondary, like a college, university age. Now it's like you could be in grade school and really, really get into movies and have a very good opinion on them that deserves to be shared.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The fact that like now, any kid, like I feel like for the most part, you sort of start branching out and exploring what you want as a person once you're kind of in your teenager years. That's when you want to form your own identity, and, you don't want to just listen to the music that your parents play or watch the movies that they want to watch or things like that. And so you can go like, oh, what's this? Okay, Criterion, we can watch this on the Criterion. They've got, I think, 50 of the 100 movies on the Criterion channel right now. I'm sure some of them are on like HBO Max or depending on where you live in the United States, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix. Most of these movies are probably pretty easily found. And if they're not on one of the main streaming sites, there are other ways to watch it. There's legal ways of, going to your local library and stuff like that, where they very likely have it. If you want to spend the money, I'm sure Criterion has the physical releases of most of these movies at some point or another. Or, you can go to torrent sites and they will be there as well. And if you're a 15, 16-year-old being like, hey, I do want to see what all this fuss is about this number one movie, let me find out about it. You can do that. You can find out what all the fuss is about and make your own opinion on it.
Absolutely. And which is, I mean, that's something even you and I, like, we're not that old. Like, we're older, but we're not like old. And it's like, even you and I, like when we were in high school, this wasn't an option yet. Nope. Like, it wasn't possible. You basically lived and died by whatever your local video store had, and maybe the library. But, you mentioned you could go to your library and get it. You could get your library card, and there is a like online borrow.
You can use Canopy,
digitally borrow, or like use what's that streaming service? Hoopla,
Hoopla or Canopy,
and like that's incredible. So it's like they don't even need to have the actual tape or disc, I guess disc now, in the library for you to actually go and loan.
Yeah.
It could just be a digital file. Like, it's so incredibly easy for people to get access movies and music as well. Like, just generally anything. Never before has it been this easy to access like old entertainment. And people should stop complaining and go take advantage of it.
Yes, I 100% agree. Okay, one thing I also want to talk about is how many of these we've seen. You know, they've released the 100. How many of the 100 have you seen, Rachel?
39. I know you're higher than me. Yeah.
I am at 47.
Yeah.
And it's funny where, because of this stupid bubble that we live in our social media circles, everyone's posting and be like, oh, I'm only at like 72. I'm so far behind. Oh, I feel so uneducated. And I'm at 47. I'm like, what is going on? Am I the one that's out of touch? Matthew and I were kind of talking about that a little bit last week. And I'm in a couple different Discord groups for movies. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm only at 47. Oof. And people were like, I've seen 3. I was like, oh, okay. You know what? Maybe I need to sort of reevaluate my perspective on this a little bit.
Well, there were a lot of movies on there that, like, not only have I not, like, there were some that I was like, I should probably watch this at some point. But there are a lot of movies on there I'm like, I've never heard of this movie before. So, like, I like wouldn't even have known to watch it, kind of thing. Like, it just never came across my desk or whatever. So yeah, I'm at 39. I know that that's probably relatively low, but for like a film critic or whatever, but whatever, you own it. And it just means that I have, many movies that I need to watch. I got 61 films to catch up on.
Yeah, some really great ones too. I think that's the fun of it, is I look at this and being like, man, there's a lot of movies on here that I've always kind of wanted to watch for a while, and this is probably going to give me the impetus to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, like, I never watched Singing in the Rain, which I know is silly. Like, I don't know why I haven't seen it, but I've never seen it.
And I feel like it's one that you'd really enjoy.
Probably, yeah, I probably would enjoy. I had a friend in high school, actually, who he loves Singing in the Rain, and he used to tell me to watch it, and I was in a thing back then where I was like, I don't like musicals, I don't want to watch it. I was like, why is he singing? I was like, stop it. But I know it. I've seen, obviously, some of the very, very iconic clips from it. It's one of those movies that I think I've seen so many clips, I pretty much have seen the movie. But
yes, it is definitely one of those movies, yeah.
I've never sat down and watched it. Mulholland Drive is another one that I always hear people talk about that. I just never have seen it. I don't, again, it's one of those, like, I don't know why, you just never think I don't know. I don't even really know what it's about, if I'm honest, Mulholland Drive. I just know that it's a movie that people really love. And one day I will sit down and watch it. And, but I was going through the list and trying to see, like, blind spots, or just movies that I was interested in seeing that I'd never seen before. And the 100 one, which is called Black Girl. And it's by, I should look this up. I believe it's by a Nigerian filmmaker. And it sounds amazing. Like, I'd love to watch that. So yeah, that's been added to the to watch list, which is a Senegalese woman. That's what the movie is about. So yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, that was the number 99 movie. Yeah, the number 100 was Tropical Malady, which is the Pichapong Warastakul movie.
Oh, haven't seen that one either. There you go. There you go.
There you go. Now, I know you said you had made a list of, like, which 5 you're most excited about watching. Do you want to share what are maybe your 5 biggest blind spots, or probably ones that you're most likely to watch in the somewhat near future?
Sure. So Singing in the Rain, Mulholland Drive, and Black Girl are in there. Also, probably another one that you're surprised that I haven't watched, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Just didn't watch it. I know, and it's just like, what, 3 years ago that came out? It was one of those that I was like, yes, okay, everyone's talking about it, I'm going to watch it. And then I never did. And then the years just went on. And I was like, oh, okay, guess I'm not watching that. But I will watch it. And the other one is Journey to Italy. I'd really love to watch that one because, Rossellini, Bergman, can't go wrong. How about you?
Yeah. I'm going to pin down on the Portrait of a Lady on Fire Portrait of a Lady on Fire talk there, because I want to kind of talk about the new ones that were added, or our thoughts on them. But if I was to make a list of the 5, it would probably be Playtime, The Piano, La Dolce Vita, Metropolis, and maybe something like The Red Shoes. I've got the box sets for both Jacques Tati and Fellini. And so I have the ability to watch both Playtime and La Dolce Vita like right away. So they're definitely ones that are going to be pretty easy for me to get around to watching.
La Dolce Vita is one of my favorites. I really, really love that movie. And I think I've told you, like, it was part of the 8.5 thing. I was like, I don't know how you haven't seen these movies. Metropolis, right? Though, I'm a bit surprised you haven't seen that one.
I know. I know. It's we can list 100 movies that we haven't seen, and I think every single one will both be like, you haven't seen that yet? Well, how come you haven't gotten around to that one yet?
I know,
like that's just the nature of being a film lover, is there's always another film you haven't seen that someone is going to be shocked that you haven't seen yet.
And that's part of the fun of it, though, I would argue too, right? Like you'll never ever have a point where you've been like, well, I've watched all the movies. I've seen everything. Like,
all the movies I've finished.
I've seen all the movies. I'm done. I'm done with movies. Like I finished it.
Yeah.
It's like it's just impossible. And you could even say like I'm going to finish all of the French New Wave movies, and that will take you a while. And then you'll move on to like another. You know what I mean? Like you'll never finish. And that's for people I think who are really into, and not just for film, but like into anything, like any topic, any hobby, like. It's never end. Like the thing that is the best about it is that it's never ending. Like you can never finish it. It will always be something there, and that's kind of what is exciting to kind of continue to return to.
Yeah, I agree. It's not like, great, I finished movies. Now I'm going to start music.
Yeah. Number 1, Mozart.
Yes.
Let's do this.
No, it'd be like,
I guess it would be like Gregorian
cave drum
music.
sounds.
It would be like, it'd be like chamber music would be the first thing you start with. It'd be like chamber music, done. Gregorian sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I looked at this list, and there's so many more. Like we just listed 5.
I know, there's tons of more.
I'm scrolling through again, and I'm like, I still haven't seen the 400 Blows. I really want to see Contempt or the Battle of Algiers, or like I haven't watched any Tarkovsky, and there's that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so many that I've watched. I haven't watched.
I'll say Lawrence of Arabia is another one that I'm like, I should really get around to watching this one day. But I just never have. Like, that's a movie that you grow up hearing about, or unless you're a bit older and it just came out when you were alive. But like, for our generation, you grow up hearing about it as this big epic, right? Like right there with like Ben-Hur, like those kinds of movies. Like they're epics. And at some point, if you like movies, if you're interested in film, like you will go and watch it. But I would love it if they would do like, that one seems like a movie that would be really nice if I don't know, like Lightbox or something did a screening of it or something like that. Cause I feel like that's one of those movies you need to see it on a big screen. Like it would be really cool.
Yeah. I would say like much how I only saw 2001: Space Odyssey for the first time earlier this year. And that was because I specifically was waiting to see it in theaters. I would say the same with Lawrence of Arabia. If you've never seen it, that'd be like, don't watch it at home. Wait till you go to a theater. It is just so epic and grand, and the way it's photographed. That's one that you really want to catch on a big screen.
So shouldn't just like chuck it on my iPad? Just
no.
Like on a lazy Sunday, it's resting on my tummy, and I'm just like watching it. Like shouldn't do that. That's not.
Yeah. Are you trying to conjure Martin Scorsese to come and haunt you?
You know what? I'm going to say, I don't know Martin Scorsese. I'd like to think him and I would be buddies, but I feel like he would just be happy if you just watched it. You'd just be like, just go.
You know what? He totally would.
It's like, I could have been watching Marvel, Marty, and I'm not. So, and he's like, you know what? Just watch it. Doesn't matter how you watch it. Just watch it. Although he would probably be like,
I feel like,
I was going to say, he'd probably be like, at least just put it on your TV. You don't need to watch it on your iPad.
Yeah, and I feel like with Scorsese is like he loves movies so much, and it's so annoying that like every single friggin' interview, someone's like, "What about Marvel?" And so like he's gonna answer the question because it's asked of him. But in the long run, if you're watching movies, I think he's just gonna be happy because you're watching something and getting enjoyment, because that's what he does. He loves watching movies. That's why he makes them.
Yeah, I mean, this is very off topic, but like talking about like Scorsese is like the fact that people want to shit on him for I don't know, diversity issues, or like even Spielberg, like people want to talk about Spielberg being some like very niche art house guy. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like Spielberg is one of the most populous film directors that we've ever had, and which is why he's been so successful. And Scorsese is responsible for a lot of international cinema coming to the West, like to the States particularly, but like generally speaking, English speaking communities. Like that's been him. And Tarantino, and I hate that people are making me defend Tarantino because I don't want to defend Tarantino. But I have to. I'm just like, this is ludicrous. Like, it's ridiculous. But anyways, that's besides the point.
Excellent. Yes, I'm glad that is besides the point. All right. I mentioned earlier, I kind of want to talk about the 4 new movies that came out in the last decade. We've got Portrait of a Lady on Fire. We've got Moonlight. We've got Parasite, and we've got Get Out. And I remember when, in anticipation of the list, people on Twitter were being like, okay, so, there's usually a couple movies from the most recent decade that make the list. Which ones do you think are the ones most likely to do it? And in my mind, I was like, Parasite is the only guarantee, in my opinion, based on the way it's received. In my opinion, I would love it if Portrait of a Lady on Fire made it. And then if I was to name a third, I probably would have picked Moonlight. I think Get Out was probably the most surprising addition for me of this group. I know it's very well received, but I didn't think it would be that well received.
So I'm pretty much the complete opposite to you. Get Out was the only one that I thought that's in. Like in terms of new movies, I was like, Get Out's going to be in there. I didn't really think about what else could be in. Like I didn't really, I don't know. Maybe if I thought about it longer, then I could have come up with some more titles. But to me, the only one that I was like, yeah, for sure, that's going to be in is Get Out. So I wasn't surprised at all that it was in there. And it just, because to me, it was the impact that Get Out had, regardless of if you like the movie, like it's nothing to do with that. It's just like the way that Jordan Peele took the horror genre and really twisted it. Like, and it's not often that you see, like in this day and age, you can see a director be genre changing or genre defining. That doesn't happen that often anymore, just because of how many movies have come out and so much has been done already. But Get Out was one of those ones that it did feel, it feels different to me. And that one I wasn't surprised by. Parasite was probably the one that I thought it'll probably make it on there. And I'll be honest, I know, again, like these are whatever, we're not meant to be arguing about should it have been or shouldn't have been. But I was like, Parasite? I was like, really? It's like, if you're going to choose it's like, if you're going to choose one of his movies, it could have been something else. But the impact of Parasite was phenomenal. Again, just one of those that it was a part of a bigger conversation as well. And I would say the same for Get Out. So yeah, but I was the opposite to you. For me, Get Out was the one that I was fairly certain would make it in.
And I think if the list came out just in alphabetical order and be like, hey, these were the 100 films that got the most votes. We're not going to reveal what the votes are, but these were the 100 movies. Here they are in alphabetical order. I don't think the discourse would have been the same. I think you would be able to look at these 4 movies and be like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. Like if it wasn't numbered, ranked. So which of the 4 ranked the highest? Like which one landed the highest in the list?
Portrait of a Lady on Fire was the first on the list at 30. So 30. I think that's what was really, really rankled people because, you can scroll down just a couple movies after. You've got Psycho, you've got M, you've got Breathless, you've got Rashomon, whatever. And so the discourse is being like, are you saying Portrait of a Lady on Fire is better than Rashomon? Is that what you're saying now, huh? Yeah. And that's the annoying thing is if this was in alphabetical order or whatever, you'd be like, oh, Rashomon and Portrait of a Lady on Fire made the list. Yeah, that's a good mix of the old and the new.
I think people would have been less eggy about it, but at the same time, the internet is just such a hellhole sometimes. Yeah. I feel like people just would have complained. They've been like ladies and lesbians, like they do not, like that's not fair. Like we shouldn't put them on, on this list. Like, come on. Yeah, but it's kind of a funny thing to me that like we would benefit a lot from not ranking things so much, but yet the internet is the thing that has perpetuated and like enhanced ranking as a thing. You know what I mean? Like there's so many lists now that are like ranking this, ranking that. And I've contributed to that too, so my bad. But it's, you know, it's kind of an annoying thing that everybody feels the need to rank everything and anything. When really it should just be, these are the 100 best, alphabetical order. There you go. Name like the top 3 if you want. Like these are the top 3 vote getters, but here are the 100 best. Like maybe Sight and Sound needs to learn from this and just put them in alphabetical order.
Yeah. Because more or less I look at it and I was like, what is the difference between the number 20 movie and the number 80 movie?
Yeah.
Nothing really. Like you're talking about, they're both influential on a grand scale that change the way we as film goers watch movies and influence artists to make their own movies as well. There's literally no difference between the number 20 movie and the number 80 movie. None
I would also say too, because there were a lot of ties like throughout the list. So
100%.
Like even just saying it was the number 20, it's like they're tied. Like a lot of the movies were tied with one another, which makes sense because this is the aggregation of, you know, a bunch of critics, and of course there's going to be a ton of overlap because everyone's working with the same sample. But it's a funny thing. It's just the internet too. I feel like if you step outside the internet, if you told people this is the site and set, they'd be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Like that's interesting. Cool, yeah. You know, like, that's nice.
Yeah. It would then turn to which ones haven't you seen? Which ones have you seen? Not how is this number 2 and this is number 4? They should be switched.
Yeah. Whatever. Everyone's got an opinion, and that's fine too. But I feel like we shouldn't be so, what's the word? Angry about it all the time. Like, just be relax.
All right. I think that's sort of a good place to stop on the official Sight and Sound list. Now let's talk about, if we were voters, how we would have voted. So do you want to go first and reveal your ballot, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. Why not?
Please.
So I went in, I'm going in alphabetical order because I think that's the appropriate way to do it. So I went with 8.5, Beauty and the Beast, 1991 version, the cartoon, not the live action. Before Sunrise, Casablanca, Doctor Strangelove, In the Mood for Love, Jaws, Old Boy, Pan's Labyrinth, and Rashomon were my 10. And I will say Old Boy, I toss and turn between Old Boy and Seven. Those were 2. And then Training Day also got in there as like the 3 that I was kind of debating. But I went with Old Boy. And I did put 2 honorable mentions, which were Training Day and Jean Dilmont. Now, I didn't do this because of the list. I swear to God I had it earlier. We wrote these out. I think I wrote this out like a month or 2 ago, because when we were basically coming up with this. And I because I had seen Jean Dilmont earlier this year, and I really did love it. But funny enough, the reason I didn't put it in my top 10 was because I felt like I'd only watched it this year. And so I feel like I needed to like marinate on it a little bit more and like know more about the movie before I could put it in my top 10. But I do love that movie. So those are my 10.
You know, I love your list. I want to talk about yours first for just a few minutes. It's awesome seeing a few movies that we have an overlap that I'm not going to reveal yet, but like seeing that you have some recent ones there as well too, like that you've got Before Sunrise, In the Mood for Love, Pan's Labyrinth, and Old Boy. Those are all, we were talking about this earlier, in the grand scheme of things, recent movies that like, it's not like, inventing the Zoom. Like some of these movies on this list are, where it's like this is their claim to fame is, they invented editing, cross-cutting editing. Like that is why they're on this list. Like some of the stuff like Battleship Potemkin, where, you're talking about literally the invention of cross-cut editing. In movies like that. And so like, it's always difficult when you're talking about movies. You're like, yeah, an old movie, like from the 60s. Well, that's not really that old. And like, okay, so from the 30s. It was like, well, you know what? Movies have actually been around since the late 1800s. So like, it's one of those things you start to argue. And you're like, all right, great. And so the Earth was created on day 1. We'll start from there.
The Lumiere brothers.
Everything
Let's
afterwards.
put them in there first.
Yes.
I mean, the way and I'd love to hear how you formulated your list, but the way that I put my list together was like I wanted to go across different genres, and I was looking more for like kind of what I was saying about Get Out, which I know is not on my list, but it was like this idea of what are the movies that are defining of the genre, whether or not it was from the 20s or from 2020. Well, nothing from 2020 made it onto my list, but like it was just this idea of like, what are the ones that I think had a really, really big impact, within the space that they kind of occupy. So like something like a Before Sunrise, how many movies have come out after that like basically follow the exact same concept of, one night, two people talking, that's it. And it's a beautiful movie, and it really focuses on script writing and that aspect of film. And then something like Jaws, like you could have put T2 in there, you could have put Jurassic Park in there, like something about practical effects and what that's done for film in general. And yeah, so like that's kind of how I was looking at it, was just what are the movies that have moved and formed cinema into what we know it today. And so I tried to reach across the different ones. Animation was one that I found a bit difficult. And the reason I went with Beauty and the Beast was because they did implement a lot of very, at the time, very innovative techniques that are now obviously used. And I also thought the music is very, very beautiful. And I don't know if we've really recaptured how beautiful music used to be in Disney movies. But yeah, like that's just kind of how I put my list together, was looking at that. So yeah, I'd like to know, actually, before you reveal your list, how did you decide what movies were going to go in?
Yeah, that was sort of interesting topic where I was like, okay, how do I narrow this down? What's the difference between greatest and best? And that's sort of the definition you really have to start with. And one that when I was sending it out to people, I was trying to emphasize, I was like, there's a difference between greatest and best. I will let you decide what that difference is, but please try to take that into consideration when you are coming up with your list. And so when you start from that, then you sort of toss out, in my opinion, rewatchability is not something that I count very highly in my criteria for greatest, because, I look at something,
I'll say for me, Old Boy's not a movie that I would want to repeat watch like that. I haven't really watched it too often, unless I'm introducing it to somebody, and that's just because of the film. But like I love it, and I think it's amazing. So I actually agree with you. For as much as I rewatch movies, I didn't count rewatchability as a factor.
Yeah, like I look at something like Requiem for a Dream. I've watched it once. I probably will never watch it again.
Yeah.
Does it deserve to be in the conversation for maybe some of the greatest movies of all times, especially modern movies? I think so, but I'm never going to put it on my best movies list.
Fair. Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Yeah,
fair point.
Like something like that. So that was sort of the first thing I was going on. And then I started thinking about like, okay, in my mind, what are some of the things that make a movie so great? You got stuff like script writing, directing, acting, cinematography. You're breaking down basically department by department of like how can a different art form contribute to making something great or greatest. And so that's sort of what I was sort of looking at of my list. So I'll reveal my titles now. And I think for both of us, if anyone's listened to the show long enough, we've mentioned these movies, most of these movies over time. I think I saw your list and I looked at it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. If I was to make a list for you, I would probably have gotten, 6 or 7 of them. And I'm sure you probably would have gotten a similar amount of mine as well.
Yeah, fair. I haven't heard your list yet. I think I told you to keep it a surprise from me.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying, because I'm trying to think, I'm like, what's on your, like, I can think of what I would think is on there, but I'm like, I don't actually know what's on your list. Yeah, I think I told you not to tell me.
I almost wish I got you to like write down.
Yeah, I should have done
piece of
that.
paper or something. Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah,
okay, whatever.
Angry
you
men.
can tell me which ones you're surprised by. I trust you that you would be honest when I reveal it to you here.
Okay.
So I've got 12 Angry Men, All the President's Men, Do the Right Thing, Jaws, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Rafifi, Seven Samurai, Silence of the Lambs, The Social Network, and Vertigo.
No, I don't know if I'm really surprised by any of those. Maybe Silence of the Lambs, but I see where that comes from. Like I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe the reason because you're not into horror movies, but that's not really a horror movie. It is a horror movie, but not in the same way that I think the reason you don't really watch them. That's a good list though, and a very Dakota list. Yes, you're right. I would have definitely put that for that. Yeah, that's amazing though. So I know I didn't want to rank them, and you did eventually put yours in alphabetical order too. After me being like, put them in alphabetical order. Yes. If you had to choose your number one, what would your number one be?
That is
it's
tough
hard.
because
yeah. Or three.
Because on this list,
your three. What are your three?
Yeah,
in no specific.
On this list incorporates several that I would overlap between greatest and favorites.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at these. I'm like, well, of course, this is my favorite. Man, wow, that's a tough one. If I was to say the top three of what I believe are probably the greatest films of all time, I would probably say Vertigo, maybe Do the Right Thing, and All the President's Men or 12 Angry Men. One of those two. I can't decide.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I would from my list, I would probably say 8.5, Casablanca, and I was gonna say Jaws. Yeah, Jaws. I think Jaws.
Right? It's hard.
I think Jaws should be in there. Like I have a lot of Jaws is another movie I really haven't rewatched it very much. Like I watched it when I was a kid, and then maybe when I was a grown up later. But I don't watch it a lot because it really genuinely scares me, and I don't like watching.
Really?
It. Yeah, it genuinely scares me. Like of all the movies, Jaws is one that really freaks me out. But yeah, I'd say probably those three. Probably those three. So let me ask you though, of your 10, you said like the overlap for the favorites. So what's your overlap of the ones that actually give me the ones that aren't necessarily your favorite, but you put them into the list anyways?
Probably
like if you made a
Silence
top
of the Lambs.
Favorites,
yeah. What one wouldn't be included?
Exactly. Yeah. Which one would you miss?
Okay. Probably Silence of the Lambs, Vertigo, maybe Do the Right Thing.
Okay.
But like 12 Angry Men, All the President's Men, Jaws, Portrait, Rafifi, Seven Samurai, Social Network would probably be in contention for that, with like 12 Angry Men and Rafifi being like 1 and 2.
Right. I don't think I realized how much love you had for Social Network, actually.
Yeah, I really adore that. And, that's what I'm talking about, where I'm going by the different criteria. Mm-hmm. The script. Like, mind-blowing. You make the 10 best scripts of all time. That would be in there for me.
Like, I think that's where my inclusion for Before Sunrise comes in. Like, that's why I think that's solely because of that. And, like, I think the performances are great, but, like, those are, for me, that's kind of what makes it. Looking through my list, I think in terms of favorites that I would have left off, I think Beauty and the Beast. I don't know if it, because I like Lion King better. Not that it's one for one, but like, I think Beauty and the Beast I would leave off. Maybe Doctor Strangelove, as much as I do love that movie, I think I probably would have left that off. Before Sunrise, and maybe Old Boy and Rashomon. Actually, I might take those off. Actually, I think there's like a good half and half of movies that aren't necessarily my favorites, but they're just movies that I think are truly great movies. And I mean, both of us, there are both of our lists have truly great movies.
Yeah. We only have one overlap though, which is Jaws.
I was going to ask, what was our overlap? Jaws. Yeah, that makes sense.
Just Jaws.
What number did Jaws land on the Sight and Sound list?
Jaws is not on the list.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is shocking, because I think one of the reasons that both of us are so highly of it, other than the fact that it's a damn good movie, is that and along with Star Wars are basically the modern blockbuster films. And, love it or hate it, what has come afterwards in terms of the word blockbuster is a very worthy reason to be considered greatest of all time.
That's insane that Jaws isn't on there. Jaws is like, to me, it's like objectively speaking, Jaws should be on there. No, that's crazy. Wow, that's very interesting. My other question for you about your list: did you factor in performances? Like, did you look at? Was there a movie that you thought like the reason this is in here is partly because of how great somebody's performance in the movie was? Because I'll say for me, no. I'll say for me, none of like I didn't consider performances. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Despite, being someone who went to acting school, I've always been more drawn to directors than I have as actors. Someone's like, what's your favorite actor? I was like, I don't know. I don't have a favorite actor. Ask me my favorite director. I'll give you a list of 20 right now. Yeah. So I would say, I think both of us can look at it and be like, yeah, our lists include movies that we would probably say have some of the finest acting performances, but that's not the reason why we maybe picked it. I loved Henry Fonda in 12 Angry Men. Or, the duo of Hoffman and Redford and All the President's Men. The whole cast of Seven Samurai led by Toshiro Mifune. Jodie Foster and Silence of the Lambs. Like all of these, are great films with fantastic performances, but that's not the reason why I picked it. And I imagine you're probably similar where you look at it and you can probably point out, the same amount of performance of like, yeah, these belong in some of the greatest of all time, but that's not the reason why I picked it.
Absolutely. Like, I think for me, you say like directors, I look at directors and the filmmaking, but for me, it's a lot to do with story and script like that. And then also, like I said, like, I said at the top, but like the impact that these movies had and like the influence that they had. But yeah, like you look at Peter Sellers and Doctor Strangelove, and obviously that was amazing. And Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung for In the Mood for Love. The voice performances in Beauty and the Beast, like all of them are spectacular. And but for some reason, performances aren't something that I'd be like, that performance was so great that it's there. Although I will say last year, Tragedy of Macbeth ended up on my top 10, and that was pretty much solely because of Denzel Washington. So because it's not really an original script, is it? But it's yeah. So, but it's like that was the reason for that. But for this list, I didn't even think about performances, which I was just realizing as I was looking at my list. Like I didn't even consider who the actors were, how good they were. But obviously they were all very, very good in the movies, which is partly what makes them a great movie.
Yeah, none of these movies would be successful if they had bad performances in them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But funny enough, like I find it interesting that like neither of us went to specifically like the performances as something that we considered, that we factored into our decision making.
Yeah. I do like how we both have a Kurosawa movie, Seven Samurai and Rashomon. If you were to be like, if you can only pick two Kurosawa movies, which two do you think people should watch? They would probably be the two that people would suggest. Yeah,
it's true. I said that it wouldn't be on my favorite kind of because it's not my favorite Kurosawa, but to me, it's either between Rashomon or Seven Samurai when you're talking about the greatest movies. And again, I know it's not one for one, like he can appear on a list twice. Like there's nothing that says he can't. But yeah, I absolutely. You and I just kind of picked the two that were the most obvious answers, basically, because they're both very, very good movies.
I think I look at my list, and one of my criteria that I probably wasn't, cognizant of, but I try not to repeat directors when I'm making lists like this, where I'm like,
same,
great, like you guys sort of spread the love a little bit. And so if I look at my list, if I were to include a second movie by one of the directors, I think the only one that would probably pop up again is probably Hitchcock, where I would probably do Vertigo and something else. What about you?
Either Fellini or Spielberg. I think I know we kind of made a joke earlier about Spielberg being considered like this art house director now, but to me, when you talk about who is the greatest director of all time, factoring everything in, Spielberg, it's difficult to argue against what he's done for film and his success critically, commercially, like impact on cinema, impact in pop culture. Like, so I think Spielberg, I probably would have included, I don't know, like a Jurassic Park maybe or something like that. And then Fellini, I loved La Dolce Vita. That's my favorite from him. And I think it does deserve to be on a greatest list. I just think 8.5 is more influential in the long run. I think 8.5 is a better made movie than La Dolce Vita, but probably the two of them. Kubrick actually maybe as well, because I think Space Odyssey deserves to be on there too. So maybe him.
Yeah, you're naming movies that, like, if I was, to do a top 15 or top 20, I'd be like, yeah, I got to include some of that too.
Yeah,
Which,
exactly.
like, it's so difficult to do a top 10. And the amount of people that, like, we're about to now get into the public poll that we did, the amount of people that tried to push back and be like, well, can I do a few honorable mentions, or can I do this as well? And it's like, no, I'm following the rules. You have 10 movies, only 10. That's what you get.
I mean, to be fair, I snuck in like 2. I think I snuck in 3.
And I ignored them.
I was like 7 Training Day, Jean Delmont. Like I snuck those in. But yeah, no, I get it. It's tough though. It is tough to just do 10. It is very, very tough to do 10.
Yeah. I was making jokes with people that would be like, oh man, only 10. And I'd reply something like, yeah, I probably have a better chance of asking you to memorize the entire periodic table than I do of asking you to name your 10 greatest films of all time.
10, and you're definite, and you're just like, these are absolutely my 10. Like everybody will be like,
put this on my tombstone.
Yeah, like everyone's gonna waver on a few movies. On a few.
I had Matthew who wanted to change one of his. I was like, no, I can't. Ballots are locked.
See, if I had been in control of this, Matthew, maybe I would have let you change it, depending on what you wanted to change.
And I'm happy he didn't, because the film he wanted to change, he wanted to switch out Zodiac for Into the Spider-Verse. And I was like, I'm glad you didn't, because no one else mentioned Zodiac. And if I was to remove The Social Network, Zodiac would probably be also one I would consider.
I love that movie. Zodiac is a very, very good movie.
Yeah.
Interesting. Great Zodiac. Okay.
Yeah. But without further ado, I think it's time for us to reveal our top 10. And the thing is, like we're just joking about, it's not actually a top 10. It is a top 12 because of ties. I am so happy the way this worked out. I had 79 people respond to me. That is, people who write about movies. So critics, people who talk about movies, podcasters, vloggers, people who kind of discuss film in various formats that are non-traditional ways. I've had directors, writers, actors. I am so impressed with the amount of people that took the time to respond. So first off, I want to thank every one of these 77 people, because you and I don't really count in this, who took the time to do this. Because Rachel, I did have to follow up with you a few times to submit your ballot.
Yeah, I literally submitted it on the day of. I think I was on the deadline, and then I
extended it a little bit, but the original deadline was when you sent.
I was on the deadline day, and I remember we have like a group chat with couple. Well, they've been on the show, Alex Hudson and Brody Condom, and Alex was like, "I'm so sorry, guys. Like, I haven't done it yet." And I'm like, "Hey, Alex, neither have I. Don't worry about it." I was like, "It's fine."
Yeah. But through all this, I'll give more statistics a little bit later, but 376 different movies were listed, which was really cool. And I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun parsing through all the data. But our top 10 is actually a top 12 just because of ties, like I said. So I will read them out. When ties occur, they are in alphabetical order first. So I'm not going to reveal the votes right now, because it doesn't really matter too much. But here's the list. Number 1. We've got The Godfather. Number 2, we've got Jaws. Number 3, we've got Seven Samurai. Number 4, we have a tie. It is 2001: A Space Odyssey and Vertigo. Number 6, we have Citizen Kane. In number 7, we have a tie with Do the Right Thing and In the Mood for Love. And in number 9, we have a 4-way tie with Casablanca, Goodfellas, Jurassic Park, and Parasite. Rachel, thoughts?
I won't lie. When I first saw the list, I eye rolled when I saw Godfather was number 1. I was like, Jesus. But I think it's interesting because it's a list that, like you said, like we picked people who aren't necessarily film critics, like who do it as their profession. We picked people who just really like movies, and not just really like movies. I shouldn't say that, because a lot of them do work in podcasts and writing and vlogging and things like that. But generally speaking, I think that like the list was surrounded by people who aren't professional film critics. And so I think it's very reflective of that. And also too, as much as I know you did try to get a different age range of people, I think majority of us are probably within the same generation or two. And I think that also heavily impacts the list. So yeah, I think it's a very, I don't want to call it a film bro list. I'm not going to go that far and say it's like a film bro list, but it is one that I think it's not overly shocking. Like it's not, you could get I'm sure people would be like, oh, like it's not like a very sophisticated, but to me, it's like, it's very reflective of a more populist, greatest, I was going to call it a greatest hits list, but it's not greatest hits. Yeah. The greatest films. I think it's a bit more reflective of that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assertion about how it looks. I agree. Yeah, I wasn't shocked that The Godfather was the number one movie. It's great. It's a classic for a reason. And if I was to probably pick out movies of the list for performances, that would probably be near the top of the list of great performances between both Brando and Pacino. So like it makes sense. And then, we've got some overlap with picks of that you and I both have. Jaws is on here. I had Seven Samurai on my list. You had 2001. I had Vertigo. I had Do the Right Thing. You had In the Mood for Love. You had Casablanca. So like it's reflective of our lists as well too. So it sort of says something where, when you're making a list like this, you're like, put your 10 down. You're like, great. Okay. So there's like 2 or 3 that I really need to have that I truly believe are in this. And then, my personality starts to seep out a little bit and you sort of see a little bit more of who I am. And I think that's sort of how everyone sort of votes. Everyone, like Godfather, obviously. Jaws, yep, makes sense. 2001, absolutely. Okay, now I can, get my weird pick. I can pick my obscure genre. I can pick my new movie. I can pick whatever documentary I like. Things like that probably wasn't making our list anyways. But everyone does that, so that's how you get this consensus top 12.
Definitely, and out of curiosity, assuming if we had 100, Godfather would be somewhere in the 100. Is that correct? It would probably be somewhere in the 100.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if I, how high would I have to go?
I was going to say, what grouping of tens would it be in the 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, so on? Where would that fall for you?
It would probably be in the 30s or 40s for me.
Interesting. I think I would go 50. Yeah. I think for me, it's definitely a top 50 movie. For certain, I can say that. Without having actually made a list of actually 100 movies, I would say I would be absolutely confident saying it would be in the upper half of that list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Is there any on there that you were... Is there anything on there that you were very like, what the hell? Like, why is this here?
Because I only had 79 people respond, that meant that there's a whole lot of movies with only one vote. 243 movies got one vote. So there's a lot of stuff on here that I'm like, oh, how'd this get on here? I'm like, oh, how did this not get more votes, sort of thing. So it's a good mix, and I find it hard to really sort of analyze a movie that only got one vote and be like, how could anyone do that? Obviously, there's quite a few that sort of stick out that I'm just like, what? And like, I don't really want to like throw people under the bus too much, but there's like one ballad in particular that is truly awful.
Do it.
I'm not gonna reveal who this
I'm like, don't actually
person is. But do you want me to list the movies on it for comedy effects?
Up to you. Absolutely up to you. If you want to call that, because whoever that person is, they will listen to it. So
I don't. Will they? I don't know.
I think they will.
Oh God, yeah.
I'm just looking through the list now, and I like that like Sicario's in there. I like Seven's in there. Spirited Away. I love that's in there. Like that's amazing. And I think like the full on list, like there's some pretty cool picks in there as well. And yeah, I funny enough though, Get Out only received a couple votes. So that's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised by that. Shout out to Orla Smith from Seventh Row, who was the only person who had Jean Dielman on her list.
Nice.
That movie only got one vote for ours. So you win the Gold Star Prize of having the best taste according to Sight and Sound.
It's a great movie. I think it's the reason maybe people are a bit shocked by it, or it didn't go higher on our list. It's just purely the fact that people haven't seen it. Like that's it. That's just it. Like just it's never been a movie that's on people's lists, and now that it is, go watch it. It's a good one. Oh, yeah. Scream made it on here. That's a good shout. Scream's a good shout.
Who was that? That was Katie from I Hope You Suffer. Nice. She had some interesting picks too. Yeah, and that was the other thing is I was really hoping to get people who sort of write or cover about more niche genres because it's so often overlooked. Like you look at the Sight and Sound list in horror, how many horror movies are on there? Like maybe 3 or 4 total. And so I know that's a big gripe in the horror community is like, we never get the respect we deserve. And it was nice because I do follow, despite not being a huge horror fan, I do follow a lot of horror critics and podcasters on social media. So it was kind of fun being able to reach out to them and be like, hey, I want to see what your list has and see what horror movies that they were including. And not all of them include horror movies in their list, which that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, horror is like one of those, the fans are strong. They're very ardent fans. Yeah. They're very passionate about what they love, which was great. But it is a shame that horror and like comedy as well, like it doesn't really get the love that it deserves. Yeah. Like drama, fantasy, sci-fi, even action, I'd say get more time than comedy and horror for some reason. And those are like the two most audience friendly kind of movies, I think. Those are the ones that like you really get an audience experience when they're good. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm just going through the list now. There's some really good picks on here. And for Matthew, we should say Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did make it on even without your vote. So like with multiple people.
Yes.
So yeah,
absolutely.
Didn't need you. Matthew.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I am making a blog post where you're going to be able to see the full list of every movie listed, a whole breakdown of a whole bunch of different stats, including some of the ones that we're mentioning now. So in case you're just like, what's going on? You love stats like me, those are going to be there. A lot of the stats I'm pulling is based on assuming every movie is equal in votes. So, 376 movies is how I was approaching it, not, The Godfather and then everything else sort of thing. But, some of the, I thought what was most interesting was looking at directors. 262 different directors, or rather teams of directors, ended up making the list. And it's absolutely no shock that the number one director is Steven Spielberg. He had 7 movies make the list, which is, just not a shock at all. Mm-hmm. Where you try and name your favorite Spielberg and you're going to get 20 different answers from 20 different people. So it's no surprise that 7 movies made his list. Stanley Kubrick in second with 6 movies. Both David Fincher and Akira Kurosawa with 5 movies apiece. Paul Thomas Anderson, Alfred Hitchcock, David Lynch, Hayao Miyazaki, Martin Scorsese, and Denis Villeneuve all got 4 movies. And then I'm, would be listing way too many to list everyone with 3 and 2 movies there. But if you were to make a list of, some of the greatest directors of all times, I think you're going to have Spielberg, Kubrick, Fincher, Kurosawa, Anderson, Hitchcock, Lynch, Miyazaki, Scorsese, and Villeneuve in your lists. For the most part.
I'm going to push back on PTA. What the hell is he doing on there? PTA is higher up than Fellini. Shut up. No, he's not.
Yes, sorry.
Give me a break.
He only had 2 movies make the list, which I assume would be 8.5 and La Dolce Vita.
Yeah, which are the 2 most popular ones from Fellini. And Fellini has some real stinkers, actually, I would say. Like, for such a great director. I mean, everyone has them. Even Spielberg's got some not so great ones. But doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, I was just saying about Spielberg. Doesn't surprise me at all, because to me, he is the epitome of a director, especially in the like the modern era. I don't think that there's another director that is even like that comes close to Spielberg, in what he has, how he has influenced cinema, and just his output as well. So it is very funny to me that the younger generation doesn't seem to be on board with Spielberg, but because it's funny because our generation, we literally grew up with his movies. Like we kind of came of age at a great time because, you know, he made a lot of, I wouldn't say kids movies, but like movies that were pleasing to children, like a Jurassic Park, like E.T., and you know, all those.
He's the definition of movie magic.
Yeah, and so it makes me kind of sad, I won't lie, to see like a younger generation not really up on Spielberg and like kind of, I don't know, I know it doesn't matter because maybe in time when they grow up a little bit, then they'll realize how good Spielberg is. But for a director that has meant so much to film and just to, again, our generation specifically, I think it's a bit of a shame that the youngins aren't on board with it, or with him, I should say, and Scorsese. Like, I'm like, come on, Scorsese.
Yeah. That said, you know, 2 of his movies made our quasi top 10 of Jaws and Jurassic Park. And I believe that the voters of this poll skewed younger, probably, you know, in their mid 30s to their early 20s is probably the average age of the voter here.
Yeah.
I didn't collect that data, but like, that's just me just sort of guessing based on the people I sent this out to.
Well, I mean, that's why I said, I think like this list is very emblematic of, because like it is within our generation, right? Like the majority of people are going to be plus or minus a generation from us, like from us. So it's not surprising to me, the movies that did come on there, and the fact that Spielberg does pop up a couple times, more times than a couple times in the entire list. But very well deserved, and go Spielberg. I will always be a Spielberg fan, even if he is art house now. If you want to consider Spielberg art house, that's fine. He's not, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But PTA above, like PTA's movies coming in more than Fellini's is ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
Yeah. The disappointing thing is only 22 women appeared on this list, which accounts for 8.4% of the total directors. And the only women to have more than one movie listed were the Wachowskis, who had 3 movies listed, which was The Matrix, Bound, and shockingly Speed Racer. Every other
the amount
woman
of disdain
only
you
had
had for that there. My God.
Sorry. Which... Yeah, it was, you know, actually, interestingly enough, it's a cinematographer who included that on their list. Yeah, so I haven't seen it, so I can't really complain too much about it. I guess this is one of those things where, like, I shouldn't mock something I haven't seen, so I just don't really have much of an interest in watching it. Yeah,
just being all judgy.
Which, like, it's shocking. Where, like, I look at this person's list, and they have both. Speed Racer and Showa on the same list.
Wow.
Showa, the 10-hour Holocaust documentary.
That's quite the...
Yeah.
Okay.
That's someone including list. Stuff like that. Yeah. It's quite eclectic. You know, Napoleon, the 1927 movie, War and Peace, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Showa, Ran, Do the Right Thing, Speed Racer. You know, like, there's some people who had, like, some, like, questionable picks on the list. I'm like, okay, your whole list is kind of questionable. But I see this, I'm like, this person sees something that speaks to them on a very innate level. So, like, I'm not gonna mock someone's ballot for that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, it's exactly what we set up at the very top, which is these lists are incredibly subjective. And if you can find something in these movies, even if we don't agree with it, that's kind of, it's part of the fun though, isn't it? Like, part of the fun is going through the list. And like you said, you had a good time, you know, parsing through all the data. And it's like, part of it is because you're like, what the hell? Like, why is this on here? And things like that. And I guess, like, the more positive thing would be for, like, the more positive thing for us to do would, like, kind of think about, why did that movie, like, what was it that somebody saw in that movie that they decided it was one of their top 10 greatest of all time? Like, I'm going through the full list and there's tons of there that I'm like, no, like, I would never have put that on there. But it's interesting to just, as like a thought exercise, of saying, like, well, what was it that, what did somebody see in it that made them put it in there? And that's very interesting.
I think I was also looking at the years that the movies came out, and it creates a beautiful perfect bell curve.
Oh, really?
Of when these movies came out. It starts out, if we're going from newest to oldest or oldest to newest, it doesn't matter either way, where it slowly, gradually increases every single decade of movies that came out up until the 1990s, which was the most popular decade, and then it slowly goes back down to 2020s. So 1920s was the oldest decade featured, and there was 10 movies, and then it goes up to 14, 17, 23, 37, 43, 44, 63 in the 90s, 59, 57, and 8 in the 2020s.
Interesting. I want to say too, because like the fact that you said the 90s is the most popular decade, like this is why it is important for lists like Sight and Sound to reach out to so many different people of different demographics, because if you do have people from the same age group, like forget race, forget gender and all that stuff, like just the age group thing, you are going to have a skewed result. And that's not to discredit our list at all, but I'm just saying like, that's why for these bigger ones like Rolling Stone and all those kind of things, if you don't reach out to a very, very broad spectrum of people, then it's not a list that you can say that is reflective of actual cinema or like film as a medium, as a history. It's reflective of a particular demographic. And like, I think that we can very safely say our list is very reflective of our age group and, you know, the people plus or minus one generation from us. And it makes sense. Like, if you think about that, it really does make sense why the older movies that made it are like the more popular movies from those decades, like from the 20s, from the 30s, 40s, you know? So it's, that's really interesting though, to hear that the 60s or the 90s was far and away the most popular, not just like the most popular, but like far and away the most popular.
Yeah, if I was to go the top 3 decades, it was the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s.
There you go. Like, and it makes sense, doesn't it?
That says
like,
everything.
It makes absolute sense because of the people that responded to this were all around the same age. So there you go.
Yep.
I would be love if I could take like a 20-year-old, like a bunch of between the ages of 15 and 25, ask those guys to make a list right now. I would be fascinated to see what they say.
Well, I can read you out that list again of that one really bad ballot.
No, don't do it. I'm trying to see it. I keep moving it along. I'm like, stop it. Let's move on from that ballot.
Yep. And then, you know, we were talking about how comedy is sort of underrepresented. I was going to like do a breakdown by genre. I was like, oh my God, this would be literally impossible to do because then you're like arguing about, okay, what's Silence of the Lambs? Is it a thriller or is it a horror? And then you're getting into like subgenres of a main genre, and you're like, okay, but then you're just going to the parent genre of like how it all breaks down. Basically, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, these movies are either comedy or not comedy. That's basically the only way you can sort of sort a film. And I was like, well, that's stupid. That's not going to work. So instead, I decided to look at genres that are not actually genres. So Jeff, please do not send me another insane episode that you record based on this data. Where I broke it down, foreign language films. Of the 376, we had 101. 26% of the movies are not in English, which I thought was pretty cool to see. The next biggest demographic is animated, which there was 25 of them. Documentary, there were 17. There were 12 silent films and 5 short films. And obviously there were some of these movies that like are you know, can cross multiple boundaries. You know, I look at something like, I'm just scrolling quickly through Your Name, which is both a non-English movie and an animated movie. So it ticks both of those boxes. So it's not like it's totally representative of, you know, you can't add this up to 100%. But still, I thought those very interesting numbers. Did you have any thoughts on those numbers?
I'm fascinated that short films got in.
Yeah,
like documentary, I think
couldn't be included.
Very underrated documentary. Like, I mean, in the last year or so, I would say I've watched more documentaries probably in the last year than I have my entire life. And it's a great medium. Like it's in, like, I love it. And there's so many wonderful stories to be told through documentary. And there is a very specific art to making a documentary versus a feature, a narrative feature. So that I get. Short film though is fascinating to me because those are not widely available to watch. Although great, like I've seen some pretty fantastic short films. but that's really amazing to me that some people picked a few short films, not just like one person either, like that there's actually like a few selections from short film. That's really cool.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that, and I was actually kind of happy that some shorts were included too, which was
I never even would have thought about it, to be honest. Like I never even would have thought that short film would make it on there. So it just wouldn't have come to me to think like, oh, I hope that short films are on there. I just wouldn't have thought that they would have been.
Yeah. The last fun thing I kind of want to talk about is I noticed a bit of a trend of franchises, and I sort of wanted to point out which movies, which franchises had multiple entries. Because normally you sort of think about franchises or series where there's multiple great movies. You know, you and I were both like one movie per director. That's our rule. It would be the same with movie franchise. It would be like, you can only pick one, and that's the representative of it. But it was sort of interesting. So I sort of grouped it in ways. The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 both showed up, obviously. I think there's no surprise there. Jurassic Park made our top 10. So did, and made our expanded list, The Lost World. Jurassic Park got 1 vote, which is a choice. And then... moving on, Lord of the Rings, all 3 movies made the list.
That doesn't surprise me.
Return of the King had the most votes. I know. The Return of the King had the most with 6 votes. Fellowship next with 4, and Two Towers with 3. Only one person had all 3 on their ballot, which, in my opinion, I feel like that's wasting 2 spots. But I was still quite surprised that all 3 movies made the cut.
Yeah, if somebody thought that those 3 were the greatest movies, though, like, you know, more power to you. It was clearly somebody did think that. But that doesn't surprise me, though, of like of the fact that is the franchise / trilogy that all 3 made it on there. Like, that doesn't surprise me at all, because they're not movies for me. I don't really like them, if I'm honest. I've seen them, I think, once.
I'm not crazy about them.
I'm not crazy over them, but like, I get it. Like, I get that Lord of the Rings is a massive thing, and I get that Peter Jackson did some pretty incredible work on those movies. So,
yes,
like, I think that's very appropriate. I think that of all of the different trilogies / franchises that could be on here, that's the one that all 3 of them showed up. Because is it, I could be wrong, is it a generally accepted thing that all 3 are good, or do they have one stinker of the 3?
I think the general consensus, and I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong, is, you know, 1 and 3 are kind of the ones that people will go to because, you know, 3 wraps everything up and, you know, does a great job of concluding the story. 1 does a great job of setting the story in motion and really building the world. So I think they kind of get most of the love. And Two Towers is almost like the indie pick of like, you know what? I like the middle one.
Right. The indie pick. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. So, like, I mean, across the board, though, it's like 3 strong movies, which is also very difficult to do in a trilogy. Like, there's not many trilogies out there that I would say all 3 are good. The only one I can really think of off the top of my head is Planet of the Apes, like the new ones.
The new ones. And even that, I would say the first one is definitely the weakest by far.
It is, but it's still a great
only
movie,
in comparison.
So, like, it's still a very good movie. So, like, I'd say all 3 of those. But other than that, it's tough. It's tough coming up with making trilogy. So cool. Good on Lord of the Rings. Good job, Peter Jackson.
Yeah. So, like I said, one person included all 3, but I was a little worried that people would just say the Lord of the Rings, and that was their vote. And so very specifically in the ballot that I sent out, I included very minimal criteria, but one of them is only 10 movies, and you cannot include things as one movie. So trilogies don't count. And I very explicitly said the Lord of the Rings counts as 3 movies, not 1. And I had 2 people put the Lord of the Rings and 9 other movies. So I was like, no, that's 12 movies. You cannot do that. You can either pick 1 of them, or you have to eliminate 2 of your choices. So I had 2 people I had to follow up with and be like, you have to clarify your ballot. If you don't respond to me, I'm going with the first movie. Unfortunately, that's how it's going. And they both responded to me and they're like, oh, sorry, I thought I could do it.
You were a real taskmaster on this one.
I had to be. I wanted this to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah. See, if I had done it, I'd just been like, it's fine. Let's do this. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
All right, continuing on. We're going on long here, so I'm going to try to wrap this up a little bit. Star Wars, both the original and The Empire Strikes Back, made the cut with 5 votes apiece. No shock there. Mm-hmm. Solo, a Star Wars story, received 1 vote.
Move on.
Okay.
No
Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 both made the cut. Yeah. No shock about Blade Runner getting 4 votes, 2049 getting a vote. I think is a that's someone's personality seeping into the votes, and I think that's kind of cool.
Very cool.
Both Toy Story and Toy Story 3 made the cut. I believe Toy Story 3 is the superior film in the franchise, but Toy Story, obviously being landmark of the first CGI movie ever, deserves to be there too.
And again, like we said, like I don't really like Toy Story 2, but I think objectively you could say it's like a fine movie. But in comparison to 1 and
I think
3,
so too. Yeah.
It's not a good movie. But like as on standalone, it's a good movie. But yeah, I would completely agree with you though. 3 is the best of that one. Yeah. But we are also a perfect age for 3. Like 3. The reason I think a lot of us like it is because it hits a lot of emotional beats that resonate with people of a certain age.
Yes. And then 2 interesting ones that aren't really franchises, but they sort of are. You've got In the Mood for Love in 2046. 2046 is a quasi-sequel to it, Wong Kar-wai claims, even though it's not really, but he calls it a sequel, so I'm counting it as a sequel here.
It's a part of a like a spiritual trilogy. There's a 3rd one.
Yes.
I can't remember the name. Yes. Angel something in English. It's like angel. The word angel is in English. Yeah. Continue.
And then the last one, also the least tenuous one I could get here is The Dark Knight. No really surprise considering the age demographics here. Mm-hmm. And Batman and Robin getting a vote as well.
Yep. Okay, move
on. And that was from our friend Jeff from Classic Movies Live. So, Rachel, do you have any thoughts about Jeff having Batman and Robin on his ballot?
Which one was Batman and Robin? Like, what happened in that one? Who was the Batman and Batman and Robin?
That's the George Clooney one with
the
nipples.
Okay. Yeah, no, Jeff, sorry, buddy. If you're going to put one of those ones, it's Batman Forever is the better one. Like, that's a great Batman Forever. It's, like, solid. Yeah, I have no comments. Okay. Good on you, Jeff, if you really like that movie. Clearly you did. So, yeah.
Well, then I kind of need to get your thoughts on Jeff including Freddy Got Fingered.
Yeah, no, I have no thoughts. I have no thoughts on that. Jeff,
come on, you gotta do the thoughts. I told Jeff I'm going to bring this up, so you got to tell me what your thoughts are.
Oh, you told Jeff you're going to bring this up? Okay, if that's
yes, I did.
I didn't know if we were just like throwing him under the bus. And
Jeff's a friend. Fair. Jeff can handle it.
Okay, well, Jeffrey, I don't really understand the point of adding that movie, but I think I could be wrong. He's not the only one that did, right? Freddy Got Fingered got 2 votes, if I'm not mistaken.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah. So
another person.
Maybe we're missing. No, we're not. But I think my thing with Freddy Got Fingered being in there is, and Jeff can defend his point, and I'm sure he will do an episode defending his list. I feel like that's going to be the next thing to come. When I look at Freddy Got Fingered, I don't see, like, again, the way that I put my list together was a lot of it had to do with how it impacted cinema and like film and pop culture and things like that. And Freddy Got Fingered, I don't even think like Tom Green as a comedian has really stood the test of time. All due respect to Tom Green. But I just I don't think that his brand of comedy was very relevant for a very particular period of time. And then after that, it wasn't. For various reasons. Like, we just kind of have moved on from that type of comedy. And, I saw him on that show, Last One Laughing, I think that's what it's called.
Last One Laughing,
he seemed very sweet and like a very, very nice man. So good on you, Tom Green. But yeah, I don't see, like I was trying to say like before, we should try to find what it is about a film that speaks to somebody or makes somebody want to put it on there. Freddy Got Fingered, I can't really think of what, although you said something to me that there was something like not to do with the movie, like the kind of the effect of the movie afterwards.
It was more so that he shockingly was given, I can't remember the budget, but several $1 million to make a movie with zero interference from the studio. And he was just as shocked as anyone else and basically made the movie as ridiculous as possible. But it's sort of funny that you mentioned about Jeff having a rebuttal. We actually have a voicemail from Jeff about his defense of Freddy Got Fingered.
Hey, this is Jeff from Classic Movies Live, and I am here to briefly say why I think Freddy Got Fingered is one of the greatest movies ever made. Written and directed by Canadian comedian Tom Green, Freddy Got Fingered is a Dadaist masterpiece in the spirit of old abstract artists. A recurring theme in Dada is begging the question of what can even be considered art, and Tom Green does exactly that with Freddy Got Fingered. It should, by all means, be considered a movie. It's got a plot, it's got recurring characters, it's got recurring jokes, it flows very nicely, but none of the connective tissue is at all conventional. Characters will act randomly. B and C plots end up lasting for seconds before swinging around and servicing the A plot again. It's kind of the best thing that a movie can be, which is fascinating and interesting, and I think its influence is just starting to leave its mark on the film world. Anyway, that's all my time, so thank you very much, and please watch Freddy Got Fingered if you haven't yet. It is art.
And he thinks Freddy Got Fingered is the... Is there not another movie that does that really well? Or is it only Freddy Got Fingered that does it? Listen, I'll just say...
I don't know.
Jeff likes the movie. He sees some importance behind it. He could come at me and be like, what's up with Jaws? Why would you put Jaws on there? I get it. Those are his 10 and those are the ones. And clearly he knew that he needed to defend it. If he finds joy in those movies and importance and significance in them, of this, what is it? The Dadaist?
Yeah.
How do you even DATASI?
No, DADA.
Oh.
Dada.
Do you know when I thought it was because that's that line, that daddy, would you like some sauce? I thought that's what you were going for. That's what I thought it was. I was like, wait, you can't just make up an art form because of this movie.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I still have some work to do. Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages? Daddy, would you like some sausage? Sausages.
Why not?
Yeah.
Religions have started over less.
That's very true. No, I mean, I'm just trying not to be too harsh on Jeff here, but if he found, I personally don't see it or understand it, but I don't need to. Good on you, Jeff.
I'm gonna give Jeff a shout out. How you and I picked different Kurosawa movies. He picked a different one as well. He has Yojimbo on his list.
That's a really good one. I think Yojimbo, Akiru is the other one that I was like, I think those are, I mean, he's got a lot though. Yeah. Kurosawa's got a lot that you could have put.
He's like Spielberg, where you can name 10 movies and argue that all of them are the greatest.
Him and Spielberg kind of sit in a very similar realm for me, where it's just, they've had such a solid filmography. Scorsese too, actually. Like they have such a solid,
absolutely,
grouping of films that you can't really go wrong picking 2, 3, 4, 5 from them. They're all very good. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. So it went Freddy Got Fingered and then Yojimbo. That's good. That's eclectic. Good job. Well done, Jeffrey.
I am going to be sharing some ballots as promotional for this. Jeff actually sent me a mock-up of his ballot. And I was like, hey, that's really cool. Would you mind making a bunch of these so I can use as promotion? And so he did. I sent him some ballots. And so we will see some individual ballots and we'll be able to comment on people's picks and things like that. Other than that, I don't feel totally comfortable revealing everyone's list and stuff like that because they are very personal at times. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is now the time where I wanna thank some people that did this. I mentioned 79 people submitted ballots, 77. I should correct that because you and I don't really count in this matter. But we've got some interesting people. I mentioned filmmakers responded to this, and I cannot believe we got 9 directors that I am just absolutely blown away that they managed to submit their list. Bing Liu, the director of Minding the Gap, submitted a ballot. That was a complete cold call on Twitter where I just sent him a message and he's like, yeah, sure, totally. That sounds really fun. I'll do that for sure. He probably has a ballot on the official site and Sound One. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't check, but I'm sure he does.
That's very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Hugh Gibson, who directed the documentary The Stairs that we talked about on our Toronto Set Movies episode, submitted a ballot. My new colleague, Jeremy Lalonde, who directed the amazing film Ash Grove, which is probably close to my top 10 of the year list so far. Thank you for him doing that. John Dashback, who directed the documentary Come Back Anytime, who I believe both of us have interviewed, haven't we?
Yep, we both did. I did for POV, you did for the for this podcast, yeah.
For the podcast, yeah. Kat Jamie, who directed The Grisly Truth, was someone who you have interviewed and was nice enough to submit a ballot. Kyle Edward Ball, the director of Skinamarink, who I think is going to blow up in horror circles. I'm seeing so much praise for his movie. I know you called it probably the scariest movie you've ever seen. Yep. So that was awesome that he submitted a ballot.
I also really want him, because I want him to succeed because he's very clearly very talented. But I actually interviewed him and I still have yet to publish that interview. So sorry, Kyle, if you're listening to this. But he told me I was like the first real review that like he got, like a published kind of review from On Exclaim. That was the first one that he got. Yeah, which was really neat. Like, and I picked his movie off the Fantasia list just based off of, I think it was just the image. Like the image that they had was very creepy.
A creepy poster, yeah.
It was so creepy. And
that's like just like a Barbie doll in a really grainy image.
And that's why I picked it. And yeah, ended up being truly one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. So I'm very happy for him. His movie's coming out in January, a little plug for him. He's it's got distribution, nice, yes. It's coming out in theater, it's gonna be on Shudder, it's gonna be great.
Yes, yeah. And I know a friend of the show, Callum McNabb, has been like harassing him weekly of like, when's this coming to Scotland?
So
I need to know.
Callum was like one of the first people I messaged after I watched the movie, actually. And I was like, hey, like whenever this makes it over to you, like however, you need to go watch this. I said, he's going to really like it. So
I know Scare Traducing doesn't do interviews, but I would so love
that'd be a really
Callum
good one.
Talk to Kyle because they interact on Twitter a lot these days.
Yeah, he'd be a really good one. Kyle's a great interview, and one day you all will be able to see that interview, but he is, or read about it, but he is a very, very good interview.
Nice. Next director was Mark O'Brien, who also both of us have interviewed for his movie The Righteous, so huge shout out to him. And then Stephen Kazansky, who directed Psycho Gorman in The Void, and also holds a unique distinction of being the only filmmaker to submit a ballot and to have a vote for one of their films. He did not vote for his own film. I will put that out there. Nathan Sizemore from I Hope You Suffer voted for The Void and put that on the list. So that's a really cool distinction that I love. I can say, yeah, we have a director make the list and submit a ballot.
Very neat. That's very, very cool. I love that.
Yeah. And the other celebrity I kind of want to give a shout out to is Tanner Zipchen, who most people probably remember from he was the in-host Cineplex's in-theater host. So he would do like the pre-show stuff, and that was something that like a lot of people know who he is, and now he does. Yeah. And now he does a bit of acting, and he still does hosting and interviews and stuff like that. So really cool that Tanner Z submitted a ballot. He was one of the ones that Jeff made a ballot for, and he's like, what? Tanner Z made it? I'm such a fan. So very cool. And
again,
thank you, Tanner.
A very generational thing. Like you had to
a little bit, yeah.
It had to be a very specific time you went to the movies a lot that you would be like, holy shit, that's Tanner Zipchen.
Yes. And then I want to shout out other podcasters, a friend of the show, Bill Antonio from Bad Gay Movies, Callum McNabb from Scare Traducing, Jeff and Pierre from Classic Movies Live, Matthew and Simon from Awesome Friday, Paulo from the Oscars Death Race podcast, Sam and Hugh from Please Watch This, Nathan and Katie from I Hope You Suffer, and Kyle and Mary Lee from Once Upon a Time at the Oscars. They're either people who have been on this show or we've been on their show. So just thank you to these podcasters. You guys are all awesome and great friends and supporters of this show. And then lastly, friends of the show who don't fit into the podcaster realm, but people who have either been on this show or were just, friends within the criticism community. We had both Brody and Alex submit ballots. Alicia and Rose, your two colleagues from the Asian Cut, submitted ballots. Sammy Felchenfeld, who's been on the show a bunch of times. Stephanie Pryor, Taylor Baker, Thomas Stoneham Judge, Todd Pengelly. Thank you all. Like I said, there's 79 people that submit ballots, and I want to thank all of you. I list you all in the blog post, so if I didn't mention you here, thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot that you took the time and submitted this ballot.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. And thank you again, Dakota. You genuinely did put a lot of work into this. And I think it's like you really, really did, though. You put a lot of work into this. And I think it turned out really well. And I know that I can't remember who it was, so forgive me, but I saw somebody on Twitter who was like, oh, yeah, there is another list. Like, ContraZoomPod was doing one.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. And like, it's great when we have a list like Sight and Sound go up, and then there's a bit of a way to respond to it in your own way, like a way to vote for something on your own as well. And you did that. So yeah, I think you deserve a good shout out here for that. So thank you, Dakota, for doing that.
Well, thank you. And so now this is our new outro. This has been a That Shelf podcast. You can visit thatshelf.com for more great film discourse. Rachel, thank you for helping out with this. Where can listeners find more of you, and what have you been working on? And you better mention the thing that you were talking about to me before the show, because that's really cool and impressive.
Again, I really didn't help out on this episode. I just joined in. I just logged into the chat, and I'm here, but I didn't actually help out with the organization. But let me see where. So RachelKH.com is my website, _RachelKH on Twitter and on Instagram. In terms of what I got going on, I'll say I had an interview with Jeremy Lalonde recently go up on That Shelf for the release of Ash Grove being in theaters, and I think I couldn't say this, like he has a physical release coming out as well, which is very cool. So yeah, nice. So there's that interview, which is on That Shelf, which is appropriate now to continue to shout out the That Shelf stuff. And yes,
synergy.
Yeah, and I have a review on the Globe and Mail, which is a very cool thing to be able to say that I can write. I have a byline for the Globe and Mail now. So yeah, it's for Spoiler Alert, which is Jim Parsons' new film, has Sally Fields, Bill Irwin, and Ben Aldridge, who's fantastic in it. And it's a cute movie, so you should go watch it because it came out this weekend. But yeah.
Not only are you on the Globe and Mail, you're physically printed. You're not just on their website. You have a physical copy of that, which is that's very old school, classic, but very cool nonetheless.
It is very cool, and I think the fact that we don't have as many opportunities to be in physical print anymore, it makes it so like when it does happen, it's very, very cool. So like I've been very lucky. Like I've been on Exclaim's physical copy for a while. I've been on it a few times. I was in like a Chinese magazine and written in English. I don't write Chinese, for anybody wondering. And POV magazine, I got on their last print issue, and like, yeah, so it's very cool when you get to be in print. Cause it's like a physical thing that you actually get to hold it and to have it, not just a digital file. Not that I have anything against digital writing, because obviously I do that a lot.
and I'm pretty sure the Globe and Mail is still Canada's most circulated newspaper.
I believe pretty cool. So yeah, I mean it is. They're not. Oddly, Canada doesn't have that many national papers. Like every province.
It's the only national paper I'm aware of. Yeah,
is National Post not national? Because that would be
I guess so. Yeah, those would be the two.
Like I would say National Post and Globe, I think, are the only two. Everything else is local, like a regional or provincial paper.
The Toronto Star does have Canada-wide reach, but it is still mostly focused on Toronto and Southern Ontario stuff.
Yeah, is it distributed outside of Toronto? Or outside of Ontario?
It is. Yeah. Well, you can get the big newspapers anywhere.
That's true. Yeah,
you can go and pick up a Winnipeg Free Press if you want, if you know where to look.
I will say, you shout out the Winnipeg Free Press. You did not tell me you're going to do that. I actually really love the Winnipeg Free Press. They have some really good, they have really great articles on there and like really good writing. So
there you go. You didn't mention the Asian Cut. Make sure you check out the Asian Cut. It's always in the show notes. Bookmark it. It's a fantastic website. You and Alicia and Rose and your ever-growing roster of writers are doing fantastic work. So I know you hate self-promotion, so I will do that for you.
Thank you. And I say Jericho Tadeo, one of our writers, just recently put up a review for Plan 75, which is Japan's entry for the Oscars this year. It's a great movie.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, so that's all that fun stuff. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the show and multiple times throughout, there is a blog post as well that is going to accompany this with even more great fun stats and cool stuff like that. So please check that out. They'll be in the show notes as always, because everyone knows I am obsessed with show notes and making sure I am linking and crediting people wherever possible. But you can follow this show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at contrazoompod. What does your greatest films of all time list look like? Send an email to contrazoompod@gmail.com. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. And also huge thank you to Stephanie Pryor for making the amazing special graphic for this episode. I'm going to get stickers printed. If you want some stickers, people, let me know, and we can work something out, because these are going to be really epic. I got a cool idea for it, and I think it's going to be great. But yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Amazing work. And if you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there as well. And if you really like the show, consider tipping us on coffee. Thanks for checking us out.